This deep dive, we are going to be tackling um, a very interesting topic. It's the curious case of the empty East Coast.
Oh, yes.
So, that stretch of the southeastern U.S., tons of coastline, beautiful beaches,
Right, right.
but surprisingly few major cities.
Yeah,
So why is that? Well, we've got an awesome YouTube video here by Geography by Jeff that's going to break it all down.
great.
So let's dive right in.
Yeah, this is fascinating. You know how, in this case, the things that make the Southeast coast so visually stunning, those beaches,
Yeah.
actually kind of worked against the large-scale urban development.
So we're talking about those picture-perfect barrier islands.
Exactly.
They're gorgeous, but I'm guessing not exactly ideal for building, a bustling New York City type of...
Not really, no. So Jeff points out that, they're beautiful, but barrier islands just don't have that stable foundation you need for a major port. And you
Yeah.
think about the Northeast cities, New York, Boston,
Yeah.
those deep glacier-carved harbors. They provided that rock-solid base for shipping and trade, which fueled massive urban growth.
Yeah.
The Southeast coast just didn't have that.
Okay, so it's really interesting. So instead of cities, springing up on the coast, development went in a totally different direction,
Yeah.
further inland.
Right, exactly. Further inland, you have these vast flat plains that were just perfect for plantations.
Right.
And sadly, this economic model, as profitable as it was at the time,
Sure.
relied so heavily on slave labor
Yeah.
and actually really discouraged urbanization.
Wow.
These plantations were largely self-sufficient.
Right.
They didn't rely on cities for trade or resources in the same way that manufacturing centers did.
It's incredible how the geography and the economics are so intertwined.
Yeah.
The system that brought wealth to the region also prevented those dense urban populations from developing on the coast.
Right.
So it's like this double whammy of factors just working against that coastal urbanization.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note the region's rivers even. While significant, they weren't quite the game changers that they were in other parts of the country.
Yeah, Jeff mentions the Savannah and the Cape Fear,
Right.
important waterways,
Sure.
for sure,
Yeah.
but not on the scale of, the Mississippi or the St. Lawrence.
Yeah, you're right. They were practically super highways for international trade back in the day.
Right.
And because of that, the Southeast coast remained somewhat isolated from global markets.
Okay.
They have internal trade for sure.
Right.
But they just didn't have that global connectivity that fuels those massive port cities we see in other parts of the world.
Interesting. So you've got those unstable barrier islands,
Exactly.
a plantation economy that discouraged urbanization,
Right.
and then rivers that just couldn't quite compete on the global stage.
It's a recipe for a very different kind of development.
Yeah, it really makes you appreciate how geography and history are just woven together
Absolutely.
to create the landscape that we see today.
Totally.
Of course, the story doesn't end there.
Oh,
We've got cities like Atlanta and Charlotte booming inland.
right. The modern economic landscape is a whole different story, but Jeff makes this intriguing argument that these inland cities,
Okay.
particularly Atlanta,
Right.
have become what he calls economic black holes.
Okay.
So instead of plantations drawing resources inland, it's these booming urban centers.
So instead of plantations, it's like modern industries and infrastructure pulling everything inland.
Mm.
Can you elaborate a little on that economic black hole idea? Like, what does that look like for those smaller coastal cities?
Yeah, so he argues that Atlanta in particular draws resources and opportunities away from those smaller coastal cities.
Okay.
So you've got a lot of young professionals, for instance, who might leave places like Savannah or Wilmington for better job opportunities in Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
And then Atlanta's role as a major transportation hub, we're talking about Hartsfield-Jackson, one of the busiest airports in the world.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
That just further strengthens its economic pull. Businesses want to be near that kind of connectivity,
Yeah.
and that just feeds directly into Atlanta's growth.
Oh, yeah. Hartsfield-Jackson.
Yeah,
I've been there.
yeah.
You could get lost in that place for days.
I know, it's huge.
It's practically a city unto itself. So it sounds like even with a head start, a city like Charleston, beautiful and historic as it is, just couldn't keep up with that level of connectivity.
You got it. And Jeff makes a great point about Charleston's location on a peninsula.
Yeah.
While picturesque,
Mm-hmm.
it ultimately limited its growth.
Yeah.
It was hemmed in by rivers and the ocean, whereas Atlanta just had all this open terrain to just sprawl out.
Yeah, it's like being stuck on a really beautiful historic island.
Yeah,
You can only grow so much before you just hit the edges.
exactly.
So are you saying those same geographic features that draw tourists to Charleston might have actually hampered its economic growth compared to Atlanta?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it really highlights those complexities of urban development.
Right.
You've got the geographic constraints, but then you also got to factor in historical context,
Sure.
economic forces.
And let's not forget the people.
Right.
People's choices and aspirations all come into play too, right?
Yeah.
So we've got this fascinating geographical context.
Yeah.
But what about the people who actually lived and worked in these cities? What does Jeff say about that?
Yeah. So Jeff actually touches on that cultural aspect.
Like, okay.
And he highlights how Atlanta became this, unofficial capital of the South.
Right.
It hosted the Olympics. It was a center of the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
These moments really shaped its identity and drew people in.
Yeah, it's amazing how these pivotal historical events can just totally impact a city's whole trajectory.
Absolutely.
And, Charleston, with all its history and culture,
Right.
just didn't have those same large-scale defining moments on a national or even international stage.
Yeah, it makes a difference. And by the late 1800s, Atlanta was already larger than Charleston.
Wow.
And that growth has continued ever since.
So it's really this complex mix, geography, economics. Right.
Cultural identity.
Yeah.
All shaping these two very different cities.
Absolutely.
So we've got this picture now of a region where history and geography almost like conspired to create this unique pattern of development.
Yeah.
Or in this case, like a lack of development along the coast.
Right.
You know what, though? I'm hesitant to call the East Coast empty
Yeah.
because it's not truly empty.
No, you're right. Empty is definitely a misnomer.
Okay.
Jeff really emphasizes that while these coastal communities may not have those huge populations,
Right.
they offer something totally different.
Okay.
You think about all the natural beauty,
Sure.
the history of the region, that slower pace of life,
Right.
access to nature, that connection to the past.
It's not about being better or worse.
Right.
It's just different.
Exactly. Different strengths, different draws.
Yeah, this raises a question for me.
Okay.
So, knowing what we know now about the history, the geography, all the challenges of this region.
If you could just design a coastal city in this region from scratch,
Oh, wow.
what would you do differently?
Okay.
Like I'm picturing putting on our urban planning hats here.
All right. So, I think first and foremost,
Yeah.
you have to tackle that transportation challenge head on.
Okay.
Jeff makes it really clear that connectivity is key.
Right.
So investing in robust public transportation, maybe even high-speed rail links to those major hubs like Atlanta,
Wow, yeah.
that would be crucial.
You can't just be an isolated outpost anymore.
Yeah.
People want options.
Right.
Businesses need those connections.
Absolutely. And then there's the question of economic diversification.
Oh, right.
You can't just rely on tourism.
Okay.
Maybe focus on industries that complement the strengths of the region.
Like what?
Sustainable agriculture,
Okay.
ecotourism, industries that tap into that unique character of the empty East Coast
Oh, I love that.
and build on it.
Yeah, play to the strengths of the region.
Right.
Instead of trying to force something that doesn't fit.
Exactly.
It's like recognizing that unique character and letting it guide your decisions.
Yeah.
But we got to talk about the elephant in the room here.
Oh,
Climate change.
right.
How do you design a coastal city with rising sea levels?
Yeah.
The threat of hurricanes.
That's such a critical consideration.
Right.
Any new development would have to be incredibly mindful of those risks.
Yeah.
Resilient infrastructure, sustainable building practices, top priorities.
Okay.
Imagine a city designed to work with the environment, not against it.
Right.
Prepared for those challenges of the future.
Okay. So resilient infrastructure, economic diversification,
Yeah.
transportation.
Right.
I'm taking notes here,
Good.
but I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Given Charleston's early lead in the region, that amazing historic character,
Yeah.
is there anything we can learn from its development
Oh, that's a good question.
or lack thereof
Yeah.
that we could apply to designing this new city?
So Charleston's story really highlights the importance of anticipating future growth
Okay.
and planning accordingly.
Right.
Their location on a peninsula. While good for defense initially,
Yeah.
ultimately limited their ability to expand.
Right.
So thinking long term,
Sure.
choosing a location with room to grow
Okay.
and designing for flexibility
Yeah.
would be key.
It's like chess, right?
Yeah,
You have to think several moves ahead.
exactly.
What other lessons can we learn from Charleston's experience? What about its vulnerability to hurricanes and flooding?
Yeah, Charleston serves as a stark reminder that you can't ignore those environmental factors.
Right.
Building a new city in this region would require a deep understanding of that local ecosystem,
Okay.
the potential impacts of climate change.
Yeah.
We'd need to incorporate sustainable building practices,
Yeah.
design for flood mitigation,
Right.
prioritize green spaces.
So it's about balancing that development with environmental responsibility. We can't just repeat the mistakes of the past.
We can't, right? We have the knowledge and the technology to create coastal cities that are thriving and resilient.
Right.
It's all about taking that knowledge and applying it thoughtfully.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexities of this empty East Coast.
Yeah.
It's so much more than just an empty space on a map.
It is absolutely, it's a region so rich in history, culture,
Yeah.
natural beauty.
And understanding those layers of context
Right.
is crucial for shaping its future.
Absolutely.
So if we're thinking about that future,
Yeah.
about designing a new coastal city that learns from the past, embraces the challenges of the present,
Right.
what are some things that would be non-negotiable for you?
Oh, wow.
What are those must-have features for a thriving, sustainable coastal city?
Well, for me, it would have to start with a commitment to sustainable practices.
Oh, yeah.
Like in every aspect of the city's design.
Right.
So renewable energy sources,
Yep.
green building materials.
A transportation system that minimizes its impact.
I completely agree. Sustainability can't just be like an afterthought.
Right.
It's got to be like woven into the fabric of the city.
Okay.
And I'd say going hand in hand with that, incorporating nature into that urban design.
Oh, yeah.
Think abundant green spaces, parks, waterfront access.
Yeah.
Create a city that feels connected to the natural environment, not separated from it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Creating a place where people just feel good living there.
Right.
A place that puts well-being first,
Mhm.
connection with nature.
Absolutely.
But what about economic opportunities?
Yeah.
We talked about diversification,
Right.
but what'd that look like in practice?
I think we need to move away from attracting just one or two big industries.
Okay.
And instead, we foster this like diverse ecosystem of smaller businesses, startups,
Right.
creative ventures,
Yeah.
maybe even create innovation hubs that encourage collaboration, entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
and really tap into that talent pool that's already drawn to this region.
Right, because of the lifestyle and the beauty.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's about creating a city that's not just sustainable and beautiful,
Yeah,
but also like economically vibrant and resilient.
absolutely.
A place that attracts a diverse group of people and offers those opportunities for everyone to thrive.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the social fabric.
Oh, right.
A thriving city needs that strong sense of community.
Right.
So creating those public spaces that encourage interaction, investing in arts and culture,
Right.
ensuring access to quality education and healthcare.
All those essential ingredients for a city that people want to call home.
Yeah, for sure.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has.
We started with this seemingly simple question.
Right?
Why is the East Coast so empty?
Right?
And we ended up reimagining the very idea of a coastal city.
I know. It's crazy.
It's like we've been on this incredible journey
Yeah.
through history, geography, economics, urban planning.
It really highlights the power of geography.
Yeah.
How it shapes human stories.
It does.
The empty East Coast,
Yeah.
despite its name,
Right.
is full of potential.
Yeah.
It just needs a little reimagining.
So to all our listeners out there,
Yes.
we leave you with this challenge. Think about what you would prioritize if you were designing a coastal city from scratch
Oh, yeah.
in this unique region.
Mm-hmm.
What lessons would you take from the history and geography of the empty East Coast?
Yeah. What would you do?
Because as we've learned,
Yeah,
geography may set the stage,
it does.
but it's up to us to write the story.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe someday the empty East Coast will be known for its vibrant, thriving, and uniquely adapted coastal communities.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring and keep those brains buzzing.